Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Thought in World Religion class. Today we are talking about Louise Hay's work. We're going through the 12 Keys to Loving Yourself. And just to get us centered today, Dee has offered to play the song, I Love Myself the Way I Am. The words are up on the screen if you do want to follow along, and really appreciate you doing that.
No problem, sir.
So whenever you're ready.
I love myself the way I am. There's nothing I need to change. I'll always be the perfect me. There's nothing to rearrange. I'm beautiful and capable of being the best I can be. And I love myself just the way I am. I love you just the way you are. There's nothing you need to do. When I feel a love inside myself, it's easy to love you. Behind our fears, your rage and tears, I see your shining star. And I love you just the way you are. I love the world the way it is, 'cause I can clearly see that all the things I judge are done by people just like me. And so till the birth of peace on earth that only love can bring, I'll help it grow by loving everything. I love myself the way I am, and still I want to grow. The change outside can only come when deep inside I know I'm beautiful and capable of being the best me I can. And I love myself just the way I am. And I love myself just the way I am.
Thank you, Dee. I was so impressed. So this is the song that Louise used to start her support meetings with. And 2 days before I decided to do this series, I asked Dee, could you learn this song in 2 days? And so I just really appreciate that he stepped up and was able to learn it and lead us in it. So thank you again, Dee. Appreciate you. All right, so last week we did talk a little bit about the history of modern New Thought, particularly Louise Hay and her creation of Hay House and the several books that she's written. This talk is going to be more about the 12 keys to loving yourself, or the 12 ways to loving yourself based off of her work. She believed that love, well, in many spiritual traditions believe that, say that love is God, or God is love. And so she believed that when we were participating in love, we were participating in the activity of the divine on the planet, and that love is the healing force of the planet. And so Louise tended away from traditional religious language. So instead of God, she would say things like universe, love, the process of life. And so the 12 keys to loving yourself is simply practical ways that we can actively engage in that energy. And we already went through the first two, but I figured today I kind of wanted to go through the first two again, just really quickly, and then maybe move on to the other ones, just in case somebody has anything to add, or I do know that we have some people, and we kind of just went over them fairly quickly last week. And okay, and while we're going through this, please make sure that you raise your hand if you want to comment, and we definitely encourage discussion when we're doing a class like this. But because we stream this live, the way that the people online can hear us is if we have a microphone. I know she mentioned that, but I wanted to kind of reaffirm that since we've had some people trickle in. Okay, so the first key to loving yourself, according to Louise Hay, was stopping all criticism. And she says, criticism never changes a thing. Refuse to criticize yourself. Accept yourself exactly as you are. Everybody changes. When you criticize yourself, your changes are negative. When you approve of yourself, your changes are positive. And somebody did mention last week, that constructive criticism can be good. And I don't believe that that's what she's talking about. She's not talking about constructive criticism. She's talking about ways in which we criticize ourselves negatively. For example, if we look in the mirror and we, have negative thinking patterns about how we look or how we, how people might perceive us. Or if, we criticize ourselves for not being a certain way, for being too much of one thing or not enough of another. That's what she's talking about when it comes to criticizing yourself. And go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was going to mention that about the self-criticism, that the ones that are of most concern are the ones that are automatic.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, yeah. And I would say automatic and probably repetitive too. Those internalized stories that we have about ourselves that usually are adopted at a very young age, either through observing the behavior of other people or, something that was said to us when we were a young person, and we've just carried that old pattern and old story along. That's a really good point. So the next one is forgive yourself. Let go of the past. You did the best that you could at the time with the understanding, awareness, and knowledge that you had. Now you are growing and changing, and you will live life differently. And this is just, saying we are all evolving and we're all growing. And I don't know about you, but I tend to grow through making mistakes. Like that's really, I can read 100 books on a topic, and I still learn best when I try something out and it doesn't work out the way that I had anticipated or wanted, and that I do it differently. And so we can certainly learn from books and we can learn from other people, but the reality is we tend to learn through experience. And that means if we're going to continue to expand and grow, it means that we have to step out a little bit and make mistakes. So, does anybody have a comment on forgiving yourself? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think it's natural that we learn by stumbling.
Yeah.
And my thought just went, phew.
Right.
But it's the way that we grow.
Yeah.
And it's when we are tolerant of other people, but we have to learn to be tolerant of ourselves and realize that, we take steps. And it's what takes it from your head to your heart is the experience.
Yeah.
So you can have all the knowledge in the world in your head, but if it's not in your heart, it's not an experience, and you haven't learned it, you just have a head knowledge of it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. John?
Yeah, the comment I had on the forgiving yourself is that I've had many, many people tell me that they can forgive other people, but they really struggle with forgiving themselves. But when you dig deeper, they're not forgiving the other people if you don't forgive yourself. And it's a dual thing.
Right. I 100% agree with that statement. We can't really forgive other people if we haven't forgiven ourselves, because we don't understand the nature of what caused us to behave in a certain way. And when we don't understand that, we can't really give that same level of understanding to another person. the example I used last week was my religious history and how I was indoctrinated. And when I first left, well, when I was first asked to leave the school and my job and all my community, I actually felt bad for a lot of the behaviors that I participated in. And then I began to realize, wait, I was indoctrinated into a system that really marginalized people, that really did a lot of damage to women, the LGBTQI community, and even, I in retrospect, as I learned more about racism, people of color and how people of color were treated in that community. And as I worked through forgiving myself on those things, I began to recognize that their level of consciousness that marginalized people was due to their own indoctrination as well. And and so I don't know that I would have been able to, and I remember probably, for years I kept saying, I'm willing to forgive them, I'll forgive them, I'm willing to, but it wasn't until I really worked through those issues myself that I understood, wait, everyone really is doing the best that they can with their understanding, awareness, and knowledge. Like that's the basis. And so if we're taught to behave a certain way and we behave that way, and then we find out later that, oh wait, that's probably not the best way to treat people, feeling guilty about that, it doesn't resolve anything, And so, that's why I think forgiving ourselves almost first, like John was saying, people can say that they've forgiven, but we can't really truly forgive until we gain perspective and understanding. Thank you for the people that are running that mic around. We're set up a little weird today.
Hello. So there's been a lot of stuff going on in my life that I've really had to practice. Not so much forgiving myself, but forgiving others, and just learning that just because you forgive them doesn't make what they did okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's really helped me just to know that the forgiving is for myself, and feeling good, and knowing that I don't have to excuse their behaviors. Forgiveness is something totally different.
Exactly. Well, and you know what? We're talking about loving ourselves, and when we truly love ourselves, we do not allow for bad behavior. We do not let somebody abuse us, because we wouldn't let, if we loved a little child and we saw that child was being harmed, we wouldn't let that person continue to harm that child. The same is true for ourselves. It's way easier to get out of toxic situations when we love ourselves, and we can forgive, but not forgiveness is not giving somebody a pass. Forgiveness, sometimes we forgive. There's a quote by Marianne Williamson. She said, sometimes love says, I do love you. Now give me my keys and get out of my house. And I think that's such, just in a symbolic way, our house can even be our heart, where we say, you know what, I do love you, but there's boundaries, and the way that you are treating me, I can't participate in that anymore, and then letting that go. Go ahead, John.
Right, and what you just mentioned was the boundaries. Brene Brown does some really good stuff on the intimacy, the ability to be intimate with another person is really dependent on your ability to set boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Well, boundaries are really foundational to any relationship anyway. If you don't have boundaries, and I think that sometimes people misunderstand what boundaries are. Boundaries are really a mutually agreed upon expectation for how this is going to play out. I think that sometimes, and there are sometimes when we have to put our foot down, but reactions, if it's just continual reactions to somebody's behavior, that's not really a boundary. If we just keep reacting to the same type of behavior over and over, saying, you have to stop doing this, that's not a boundary, because boundaries are mutual. So, another thing too is, in some of the work that I've done, I've had a lot of people confess to me things that they've done, that they feel guilty for. I've been in 12 steps where people have done the same thing. And I have never really heard anyone give me something that was unforgivable. And I think that sometimes we in our minds make the assumption that, well, we've just done something so awful that we really don't deserve forgiveness. And if there is something like that for you, where if you've done something wrong or something that you believe is wrong, and that's truly awful, my recommendation is don't do it again. Just don't do it again. Forgive yourself and move on, and don't do that again. It was kind of like what I was saying with making mistakes. When we make mistakes in our lives, those are opportunities for us to learn and grow and evolve. So let's go on to the next one. This is the one, last week when I did the handout, this was on there like 4 times. And this is, don't scare yourself. Stop terrorizing yourself with thoughts. It's a dreadful way to live. Find a mental image that gives you pleasure and immediately switch your scary thought to a pleasure thought. This is a big one for me. I had a history growing up where our entire lives were just fear-based. We were waiting for the world to end, really. I grew up in a community that it's called eschatology. They focused a lot on the end times, and that was their entire focus, was just the end of the world. And so every day we were just, living a life in such a way that we were expecting something awful to happen. And I remember as a child, if I couldn't, if I went downstairs to look for my parents and they weren't there, I immediately assumed, I've been left behind. And I'm going to have to live through this horrible tribulation. And so it took a long time for me personally to learn how to stop scaring myself. And it is a process. But we do it in a lot of different ways. We can look at our bank accounts and scare ourselves. We can have a pain and immediately start planning our funerals. There's so many ways that some people might have done that here.
You with the bank account.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the question that Louise always poses, do you really believe that there's a power greater than yourself that is supporting you? Because if you don't, no wonder why you're frightened. I would be frightened too if I thought I had to run this whole world myself. And so this to me is one of the most powerful ones. And I think it's funny, so I was talking to somebody afterward and they were looking at it and she said, yeah, I think you put that on there so many times for me. Because it was a misprint. I copied and pasted the little text box so that they were all the same size. and I was like, that's okay. So yeah, stop scaring yourself. Does anybody have comments about that? Does anybody do that? Other than me?
Amen.
Yeah.
Not do that.
Huh?
Does anybody not?
Does anybody not do that? Yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great. Cis white guy doesn't have any fear. It's wonderful.
That's true.
It comes, that's part of it.
Yeah, it probably is. I'm not. And by the way, I'm not trying to diminish your life experience. I'm just saying that there are certain lifestyles that diminish this fear that we have, because the reality is fear is something that is holding the planet hostage, and working through that, we're contributing to peace on earth when we actually work through that. When we take the time, we're doing Silent Sunrise, which is a meditation Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. till 8 a.m. And when we take the time, and I'm not saying you have to do it there, but when you take the time to go within and find that infinite source of peace within, you're not just doing that for yourself. You're connecting with every human being on the planet that is in that vibe, that energy. And you're creating something systemic in our world. And yeah, it may not seem like it's very prominent right now, but that's why it's so important that we do the work ourselves. One of the things when we were talking about Louise Hay last week is, she used to say that, she believed that you had enough love in your heart to heal the whole planet. But then she said, but start healing yourself first. And that's how we get peace on earth, and that's how we heal the planet, is by loving ourselves. Yeah, go ahead.
You're not just affecting everybody that's your vibration. You're affecting everybody.
You're affecting everybody.
Because just like when you throw a stone into the lake and it ripples,
mm-hmm.
It ripples the whole lake. It ripples everybody. And so it's for the whole planet.
Yeah. John, did you have something to say? I like hearing from you. Anybody else?
I could talk the whole time.
So I'm not sure if that thing about if you aren't comfortable with yourself, you can't be with others. I'm recently in a realization of how many paradigms that we've just taken on personally, societally, and stuff that you don't know what you don't know until you start seeing it.
Yep.
And so I've started realizing that, noticing that one of those personal ones for me is kind of distracting and kind of pompous in its own way, but it comes from being a service, caring, wanting to give and help person that I'm always wanting to give information and advice.
Mm-hmm.
I have come to think you should only do that when people ask you for it, probably.
Yep.
And that's almost critical of people. It's saying I know better than you and I, have the better thing. I would like to ask if we could create a new, begin a whole new paradigm of the whole planet of giving constructive criticism a new name.
Yeah, I would like that too. Yeah, I actually call that metaphysical malpractice. And I mean, it's really easy to do when we see something and we're like, oh, I've got the answer for that. But here's the thing, we do have the answer, but it's not outside of ourselves. If we see something and think about Jesus. Jesus did say that you healed yourself, but he did something inside of him that transformed circumstances, that healed, another person. Go ahead.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit on, John mentioned Brene Brown earlier.
Mm-hmm.
She had a beautiful talk one time that I heard, and she said, isn't it interesting that when someone is vulnerable with us, we see it as an act of bravery. It's so courageous for somebody to open up to us and share that nitty-gritty, but we think that when we're being vulnerable, we're showing weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a perspective shift.
It is, yeah.
We're doing the same thing. We just decide that what we're doing is inferior to what they're doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good one. I like that. Yeah, and I'm going to share this story. So I went through a period of time, we had moved, and moving can sometimes be a crisis when you move to a different state or even a different climate. And I was going through a personal crisis where I had trouble just leaving the house. We moved to the place where I grew up, where I experienced a lot of my religious trauma, where somebody attempted to murder me for being gay. I mean, there was just a lot of trauma in this area. And I got to a point where I could not leave the house. I was just agoraphobic, and it was for a few months where I just really was like, I'm not leaving the house. And thankfully, I have a husband who really was understanding and who said, this is not a forever thing. This is you're just healing right now. Well, when I finally did go out, I grabbed a deck of affirmation cards because I'd been in New Thought for a long time. It didn't make sense to me that I was experiencing all these things, but it's just another level, another layer of healing. And so I grabbed the affirmation cards and I said, I'm going to the grocery store. And my husband said, you are safe in the universe and all of life loves and supports you. And I was like, that's the kind of relationship you need to look for if you're single, by the way. But, and I was like, and that has been one of my affirmations for, 20 some years now. And so I grabbed the affirmation deck and I went to the grocery store because that's what I was going to do. I was going to go grocery shopping, terrified though. And so I'm reading through these affirmation cards and I probably sat in the parking lot for, 30, 40 minutes. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go in and I'll bring the affirmation cards with me just in case if this gets too intense, I just have something right there. And so I brought them in with me. And, I was in the produce department and immediately something just, and I was terrified and I was scaring myself. But the reality is I didn't even know the thought behind it. Some of those traumas can even be pre-verbal. So we sometimes don't have language to express what's going on. But what I did, and I don't, other than spirit, motivating me, what I did was I went up to the person that was near me. And I spread out the cards. I said, would you like a card? And she said, what is it? And I said, it's just a nice thing to say. And she pulled the card out and she read it and she immediately started crying. And I was like, oh my goodness, we're all frightened. We're all scared. We're all experiencing, maybe not all. Greg is fine. But But I was like, wow, I'm not the only person experiencing this. And that, I experienced so much healing in that little exchange. And I began to carry those cards with me everywhere. In fact, I've given away cases of those cards at this point. I just carried, in fact, when I would go to the grocery store after so long, I would just be shopping and I'd start going, hey, card guy! And people would tell me stories. And so I do want to say that the whole don't scare yourself, remember life is a process. We're actually going to get to it eventually. But remember that this is a process that it's okay where you're at right now as well. And that, but we'll get there. So anybody have any comments about don't scare yourself? Okay, I will move on to the next slide. All right, be gentle, kind, and patient with yourself. So be gentle, kind, and patient. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself as you learn the new ways of thinking. Treat yourself as you would someone you really loved. When a child is learning to walk, they fall down a lot, and that's just a normal part of the process. And we don't shame them and, what, you should have learned this by now, We don't do that. Well, I would hope not. And the reason behind that is because we understand that growth takes time, that learning takes time. And it's the same way when we're talking about the evolution of our own consciousness, is that it takes time. That's why I was saying, I had been in New Thought. I know, Matt, I see you. Just one second. When, I had been in New Thought for, I'm trying to think of it, probably 10 years when I moved to Michigan and had all of that traumatic experience. I thought I was fine. I mean, I was coasting and happy and, I didn't, but then when I got there, all of this other stuff came up and it's just because it needed to leave. And so that's why we need to be patient and kind in this whole process, that this process just takes time. And that's okay, because guess what? You have eternity. And you know what? The reality is I think we continually evolve throughout that whole time frame. And so being patient and kind with yourself now is I would say learn that now. because if we're going to evolve for the rest of our conscious experience, which is, from what I know, forever, then yeah, that's learning this at an early stage or at whatever stage you're at is key. Matt, go ahead.
The child you once were is still in there.
Exactly.
What would you have wanted an adult to say to you when you were a child?
I love that. Absolutely.
The other point on that that came to my mind when you said that was a child, your child, is someone who you love to the bone in such a deep way. And if we can love ourselves that way, oh, how powerful is that shit?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I was thinking, a little kid doesn't go, oh, dang it, I'm so bad, I fell down again learning to walk.
Right? Well, and if they
as little children.
If they did, they might be crawling around for a long time. I know some adults who metaphorically are still crawling around. So
I think it's kind of a trap to assume that just because we get out of a situation, that the situation is out of us. We live in something for so long that we build up all of these narratives and all of these. I mean, like you said, you were ashamed of some of your actions, and those are things that you had inside of you. And so even if you leave the system where you were behaving that way, you're still ingrained in that way. So you still spit out these things that you're like, where the heck did that come from? I don't think that anymore, but it's stuck. And so we have to work to pull sometimes that situation out of us even after we've left the situation.
Yeah, I agree.
And what she just said reminded me that in relation to trauma is there's always scar tissue.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Anybody else on be gentle, kind, and patient?
I wonder if the being patient and kind when that stuff is coming up and trying to come up is what is one of the main keys to helping it move. if it starts coming up and you're guilting and shaming yourself, you're rehearsing that distress,
Mhm.
like you're keeping it from flowing on.
Yeah, yeah. I know when we moved, Finding Dory had just come out on probably a streaming, and so Matt and I decided to watch it. And I remember that whole period of time in the back of my mind, I just kept going, just keep swimming, 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 just keep, because I seriously, everything felt very raw and very new and very scary. And and that's how I made it through that whole period of my life. So,
Finding Dory, see how happy she is all the time because she carries nothing with her.
yeah, yep, yeah. And that's what I was, in my story. That's what I was doing is I was unloading. I was letting go, and that's really why I felt so vulnerable as well, is because I was unloading a lot of stuff. Anything else? All right, move on to the next slide. All right, be kind to your mind. Self-hatred is only hating your own thoughts. Don't hate yourself for having thoughts. Gently change your thoughts. I think this is important too, and I mentioned meditation or silent prayer, and one of the things misconceptions that I hear people say about meditation is that meditation is just you clear your mind and you enter into this state of no thought. And I mean, there have been times where I've had moments where I've sensed that, but I'm sorry, to me, that has never worked. It is your monkey mind. Its nature is to continually create thought, right? Old thoughts, new thoughts, just constantly. And to me, meditation is far more just observing, without adding energy, especially to the negative thoughts, right? But adding a bunch of energy to the thoughts, and just observing it. And, sometimes, I know Louise, when she taught meditation, she was a transcendental meditation teacher for years, but she would teach people to just observe, like, oh, look, there's a happy thought. And she'd say, let them float away and like a cloud in the sky, just let them float away like a cloud in the sky. And then, there's a disaster, There's a relationship thought, and there's a conversation, and that is allowing yourself to observe your thought without giving them so much energy and attention is is a part of it. I also too, even just this past week, I had a client. I was working with a client, and I received a notification on my phone, and I was like, okay, and I went to click on it, and the back of my mind says, this is meaningless. I was like, okay. I click on it, and it was a terrible review. And some of it wasn't even true. And even though I had that thought in the back of my head, like, I had all of this emotion come up. And I'm like, am I ever going to reach a place where, because obviously my intuition was like, don't put energy into this. It doesn't matter, and I think, I have a tendency of berating myself for the feelings that I'm feeling. And so, and I was so grateful that I'm participating in the Silent Sunrise. I was really grateful that I was doing that because it allowed me to just feel. I can just feel whatever's going on and just allow that to float away like a cloud as well. So, anything else about be kind to your mind?
On the thought thing, what came to my mind was that breathing, because you were talking about meditation, but breathing and thinking are parallel activities. Because we breathe automatically, and then we can choose to breathe in a certain cadence, especially during meditation. And thinking is the same way. We have the automatic thoughts, but we also can choose to think. So when people are struggling with this whole idea about gently changing your thoughts, to kind of think of it in that way can be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to plug another person, I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
Pema Chodron wrote several books, and she at one point said, when you have those negative thoughts coming into your head, instead of scolding yourself and criticizing yourself and being like, oh heck, here I go again, just say thoughts and let it go. and then replace it, like you just said, with something positive.
Yeah.
So instead of scolding yourself and saying, I shouldn't be thinking like this, just that's a thought, and let it go, and leave it at that.
Identify it.
Anybody else? All right. Yeah. I think this. Well, I just want to comment one more thing on this one. For me, for a long time, because we have this thing in New Thought, thoughts create your experience, right? Thoughts create your experience, and so I would get really stressed out about thoughts that I was thinking because I had a lot of thoughts built up. I was talking about eschatology or like end time stuff, and I had a lot of thoughts built up. And I remember one time I was sitting there meditating, and I was absolutely convinced. I reached a point where I was like, I didn't really know what to do next, and so I was like, well, then just sit there until you know what to do. And so I sat there and I had all of this. I was convinced the world was going to end as I was sitting there meditating. And I think I spent several days just sitting, not listening to music, not just sitting. And all of these thoughts, and through that process, I was able to take away the power of some of those thoughts. And here's the thing, those thoughts still sometimes run through my head, but the power that they had, the experiences associated with them, they aren't there anymore. So, anything else? All right.
I was going to say.
Oh.
Say something. I just want to comment kind of what you're saying, as we become more aware of the power that our thoughts have, then we can tend to be afraid of, oh my gosh, I'm having this negative thought, well, why am I having this? And then we start berating ourselves for having these thoughts. What's helped me is to realize that I'm not the one that's deciding to have these negative thoughts. Like they just kind of come in and then just kind of be looking at it like, well, that's interesting, and like you kind of said, just kind of let it go, but just not letting it have that charge to it and being able to come back to my center, quicker than previously being able to do. So.
Yeah, and have you ever noticed when you try to resist a thought, it will just stick around, Yeah, the more you're trying to or the more you're criticizing the thought that you're having, the longer you're going to have it. So, all right, let's move on to the next slide.
James?
Yes.
So I've been studying a lot of hypnosis, and I find that really it's just another name for positive affirmation or concentration or, getting back behind the conscious mind of the stuff that got landed there and stays sitting, And so I've had an experience with doing a practice that was 1,001 of a mantra every morning, and then you would do it two or three times a day. But after doing that thing for long enough, it actually started replacing the automatic train of thought. That was like this stream, and it was like the streams were saying it, and the trees were saying it, and you could hear it in the vibration of every sound sounded like it was saying it. So that might be a little there I am trying to be helpful, but you're reminding me that, oh yeah, that was a way that I stilled the mind in a very simple and pragmatic kind of way, sort of.
Yeah, well, in kind of similar, in You Can Heal Your Life, which is one of Louise's books, she recommends, one of the practices that she recommends is using I approve of myself as a mantra. And she said, now say it 500 to 1,000 times a day. And she tells a story about how people will say, 500 times? I can't do that 500 times. And then she says, okay, so just think of when you have a negative thought, how many times do you repeat that? And I think that's it. That's the whole thing. So anyway, so the next slide is praise yourself. Criticism breaks down the inner spirit. Praise builds it up. Praise yourself as much as you can. Tell yourself how well you're doing with every little thing. And this is one that I kind of have a hard time with. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Literally every little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't realize sometimes the automatic responses of, oh, well, I could have done that different. What if I did this? What if I did that? No, you did the best you could. I did good. I'll do better next time.
does anybody actually have a good practice of praising themselves? Like, sort of.
Well, when I was in the kitchen and I was listening, and I wanted to raise my hand then, but it's kind of in between. It's when I catch myself having a negative thought, I do one of these, slap myself in the forehead and go, silly goose. And by saying silly goose, I'm gentle with myself,
Yeah.
and and making it okay.
Right, that's great.
Or I could have had a V8.
Yeah. I love that one.
Versus a 4-cylinder.
Yeah. So when I was in Michigan, one of the first things I did after I started handing out cards was there was no support in this very conservative area for LGBTQI people. And I found out that a group of people after the Pulse nightclub shooting, were doing something. And I don't know what possessed me. I've never liked public speaking, but I sent an email to the person that was organizing it, and I said, I'll speak at that event. And we're talking, this was only weeks after I started handing out cards, so it's like, but it was so strange. Like, I said that I would do that, and then somebody came into my life who has written several books, New York Times bestselling author, and one of the best coaches in the United States, one of the most sought-after coaches. Somehow I got connected with her, and she coached me prior to speaking, and she said when she was on Oprah, one of the things that Oprah had told her to do, she says, whatever happens, say, that was amazing, afterward. And so that was what she told me to do after this first speaking engagement. And I was a mess the first time, but it's funny how when you are just in front of people speaking, how what you hear and how what they hear is so different. And so I immediately afterwards, I said, that was amazing. And then I got off the stage. There were maybe 200 or 300 people there. And then other people started going up and saying that was amazing. Because I just talked about my experience with conversion therapy and how I am working through the process of letting that go. I mean, I don't even know, we were just talking about how do we overcome, trauma that takes place towards our community or in our community as a result of violence. And so yeah. So that, I think that was probably the first time that I praised myself for something. To be honest with you, I never even thought about it up until that point. So, anybody have a comment on this? John?
I just was going to say, I think we're culturally taught not to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's generally in culture, and so that it is something that we have to intentionally do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, big egos are bad.
All right, the next slide. How many more slides do I have? I should have numbered these.
That's amazing. You're amazing.
I am, yeah, I'm doing a really good job. Yep. Okay, so support yourself. Find ways to support yourself. Reach out to friends and allow them to help you. It is being strong to ask for help when you need it.
That's one past halfway.
Okay, good. So we're gonna fly through these next ones because I have about 10 more minutes. So yeah, I mean, this is something I'm still working on. It's funny because my Whitestone last year was, the word that I got was supported, and I hated it. And so I wrote under it something else because I was like, it's like, that can't be right. But no, I mean, I've always just been a person. It's like, I just need to take care of myself. But what had happened that year is, there were times when I really needed other people's support, and I got it. So support yourself. Does anybody have a comment on this? I'm going to try to get through all of the slides. So, okay.
In other words, don't comment.
Yeah.
No. It's fine if I don't get through them, or if I just take the last 5 minutes, just flying through the last few. That's fine.
In other words, just listen and shut up.
That's what I heard.
Okay. All right, so be loving to your negatives. Acknowledge that you created them to fulfill a need. Now you are finding new positive ways to fulfill those needs. So lovingly release those old negative patterns. So yeah, one of the things that Louise taught a lot is you don't need to make yourself wrong or bad to make changes. In fact, it's a lot easier to make changes in your life when you're not doing that, when you're not making yourself bad or wrong. And so she was a big proponent of, loving those negative things, that those negative things are just ways, you could even say that they're ways to self-medicate, we have the patterns in our life there for a reason. Like they've generated for a reason. And when we make them wrong or bad, that doesn't solve anything. So.
My comment is, what is the negative thing?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Everything is growth. So everything is evolution. So there's a need to hold on to something we define as negative.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I agree with that.
Even those people that we
why don't you do the microphone?
Even those people that we draw into our lives to demonstrate our own negative thinking about ourselves are good things.
Yeah.
And good people. And doing us a favor.
Yeah. All right, so the next one is take care of your body. Learn about nutrition. What kind of fuel does your body need in order to have the optimal energy and vitality? Learn about exercise. What kind of exercise do you enjoy? Cherish and revere the temple you live in. Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
And don't put so much emphasis on, I have to do 100% healthy food. Putting food in you is better than no food.
Right.
So
I have no problem with putting no food.
if you're putting what is considered junk food in your system, that's better than no food whatsoever. And then you can work towards being a little bit healthier, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that goes to loving your negatives too. I know with exercise, exercise has not been one of my favorite things. And I actually found something that I really like. I like to hula hoop. and so, aerobic activity, they recommend 30 minutes a day, and I don't mind doing that for 30 minutes a day. And so I was like, all right, I found it. So, or dancing, or just moving your body is good, I'm really grateful that I've always kind of been a fairly active, I like to do things, and so, but yeah, find ways to exercise your body. Learn about these things too. I'm constantly learning about nutrition myself, and I feel like I'm still learning. It's a lifelong process. Any comments to that? This is not something I'm an expert on at all, so.
I will just say I just came across a guy that is like a born-again celery juice person, and it was pretty astounding, his experience and his writing of it, so that made me think of that thing.
Yeah, so in my community in Michigan, there were a lot of people that really did the whole celery thing, and so I tried it, and I did it for quite a while. My tummy does not like it. Not at all. So, but I have heard it works really well for some people, and that's another thing too, is that our bodies are so unique. There are things that my husband can eat that I just can't eat. My body doesn't like it. So yeah, we're just unique. And learning what goes with your body, I think, is really the goal. All right, so the next one. So do mirror work. Look into your own eyes. Express this growing sense of love you have for yourself. Forgive yourself while you're looking in the mirror. Talk to your parents while looking in the mirror. Forgive them too. At least once a day, say, I love you. I really love you in the mirror. So, has anybody done mirror work ever? Yeah. I actually really like mirror work. In fact, in my apartment, we have mirrors up everywhere. And so I kind of just like to walk by those mirrors and just, say, I love you. You're looking good, kiddo, and stuff like that, you know. And they're just everywhere for that reason, so that, you know, everywhere I go, I can be conscious of how, you know, really what it does is it helps me understand what I'm thinking. It breaks me out of negative patterns. I have a mirror next to where I work, next to my desk. Because sometimes, you know, when you're working, sometimes you have conversations and maybe you didn't quite show up the way that you could have in that situation. And so in times like that where I'm like, you know, I could have probably communicated that better, I will use that mirror and I'll say, I love you anyway, you know. But yeah, mirror work to me, has been a really powerful resource to help me. And a lot of people, when they first start mirror work, they want to break the mirror. You know, they look, Louise would say, you know, you take a mirror and I love you, James, exactly as you are. Some people can't start out there. I couldn't start out there.
I cried for a month.
Yeah. You know, so Louise would say, well, take it a step back. I am willing to learn to love you. And some people even have to take a step back from that. I'm willing to learn to like you. And it's just how much do we have built up in our consciousness related to our body image, you know, our intelligence, our how we interact in the world. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just going to say a slight variation on mirror work can be to use video off of your phone. Mm-hmm. Because how you were talking about how we don't hear ourselves the way, you know, other people hear us, but then when you hear yourself, talk to yourself on video, it takes it to a different level.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I have to watch these. I do the videos for YouTube, and so I have to watch these to edit these, and so I always have to watch myself. And at first, that was a bit challenging, and then but then afterwards, I was like, that actually sounded pretty good. I kind of liked that. So yeah. I like that, John. That's it. I would recommend that practice because I've had to do it for YouTube. So, all right, let's see. Do it now. Don't wait until you get well or lose weight or get the new job or find the new relationship. Begin now and do the best that you can. Love yourself now. Don't wait until, you know, some people just keep putting it off, waiting for, you know, the right time, or yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Does anybody have any comments on this slide?
I just wanted to tell you.
All right. And then finally, hey, we made it through all of the slides. Have fun. Remember the things that I'm starting over. Remember the things that gave you joy as a child. Incorporate them into your life now. Find a way to have fun with everything you do. Let yourself express the joy of living. Smile, laugh, rejoice, and the universe rejoices with you. And just a quick comment to this one. You know, sometimes we can think of the healing process as, oh, it's just so much work. But it can be fun too. I've done it both ways. I prefer the joyful, fun way of doing it. So have fun. And we do have announcements, but that's the last slide. Does anybody have a comment on having fun with the process? And then we're going to do announcements.
Quite a few years ago, I took an Artist's Way course. Julia, what's her name? Cameron. And one of the things that we had to do was, it was a accountability group. So every week we got together with this group and we had to give accountable how we had fun that day, that week, and let the child out. And so, you know, they were like, go buy crayons, take a dog for a walk. I mean, all kinds of crazy things. And you got, 12 different people in the room that gave their what they had done that was fun that week. And sometimes you're like, oh, well, that might be fun. Mm-hmm. It was really neat to be in an accountability group that way. And you had to have fun. Mm-hmm. You had to do something that let that child out, because that's how you become creative. Yeah. And begin to let that flow. So that was a really, really fun thing.
Yeah.
I just have one last comment that back in the 70s, in the heyday, we had a motto, and if it feels good, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the answer to everything.
Nice.
We have a practice at our house now with our many children of sitting down around the dinner table, and every day we say, what was something awesome, what was something challenging, and what was something silly about your day? And our 1-year-old asks us now. Greg comes home and she says, good thing, silly thing. And we get to answer, and it makes you recount your day and think about the highlights, because you want to give your child the highlights. You don't want to tell them about all the nitty gritty, but we get to face those too, and so it's balanced. It's beautiful.
No, yeah, I love that. It's really good because and that's focusing on what we're grateful for, or on where we find joy in life, because it's really easy to just get so caught up in the negative things in our lives. And the thing is like, somebody can be driving to work and have one experience and then allow that to shape their entire day. And the more conscious and aware we are of how, the good things as well, it's so important.
Hello. I just had a surprise yesterday. Someone in my building invited me to go down to see the Elvis place. And she's got it all paid for already and everything, so I'm excited about that.
Nice.
I hope I have fun.
Have fun, yeah, absolutely.
Just plan on it, Pat.
All right, does somebody have the announcements?
Greg has the
Okay.
announcements.
Terry, you're doing the announcements?
Camera, coming up.
Camera.
Yeah, come
go
all
ahead.
the way up there.
Oh, I guess you have to be here.
Up here? Oh, okay.
You have to be here.
I must be here.
We have rules, I guess. Yeah.
I can do this. Today is the last day to purchase raffle tickets for the beautiful custom-made guitar that was built by our very own Richard Ziegler. The drawing will take place during the town hall. Tuesday morning, book club group is starting a new book. They will be discussing the Silva mind control method. It's fantastic. The 9:15 a.m. New Thought World Religion class for the rest of May will be Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, taught by Greg Lee, our very own Greg Lee, open to all adults, and you can attend on any Sunday. Join us Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., excluding holidays, for Silent Sunrise and feel the power of collective prayer. Stay a few minutes or 2 hours if you wish. Submit your prayer requests online. Be included in our daily intentions. I love that about the meetings here. You can come and go any day, any time, whatever. It's not too late to RSVP for the Women of Strength Banquet, May 12th. Be sure to get your baby pictures in as soon as possible. On May 18th, Amy Burnett will be leading a meditation service in the sanctuary at 6:30 p.m. Sue will be teaching the Christ starting May 24th. The class will meet for 5 weeks. This is on the licensed Unity teacher track. Cost is $10 for credit and also suggested as a love offering for non-credit participants. We are collecting new and gently used tennis shoes in the blue box in the foyer. Our goal is 100 pairs.
We only have 90 to go.
Only 90 to go. Who's this for?
The Connecting Grounds.
Connecting Grounds. Homeless and
Yes.
challenged. Okay. Be sure to stay after the service today for the town hall meeting. Even if you didn't bring a dish for the potluck, you are invited.
Very good.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Let's circle up.